Welcome to the Best Minds in the Association podcast from CSAE. I'm Tyrone Adams, the president of CSAE, which is the Colorado Society of Association Executives. I'm happy to bring with you today a conversation with Dot Miller. He is the CEO and founder of The Solution, a Colorado-based association management company. Good morning, Dot. How are you doing?
I'm so excited to be here with you, Tyrone, one of my favorite association execs in all the world. You're amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. And, the feeling is definitely mutual. Before we begin, Dot, they wrote out some things for me to say about you, but I want to hear from the horse's mouth. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about you?
Sure. About my association world. I was a business owner for years, and then I became a Chamber of Commerce president in Arvada. From there, I was called to be the CEO of the Independent Insurance Agents of Colorado, the Association for the Independent Insurance Agents. And once I got there, I got really involved with CSAE, served on the board, and I learned about association management companies. And I felt like I could really help make a difference in some of the associations that were struggling. So I started The Solution back in 2016 to help struggling associations, people that couldn't really afford their own staff. All of my business has been referrals, so we haven't really marketed ourselves a whole lot. And it's been organizations that have gotten into a bind somehow. And how can we help? How can we help you grow and flourish as the association that you once were or had always hoped to be? And now from there, our name grew and our reputation grew. I have the most incredible team. My team on The Solution, I'm going to say, is the best of the best in the whole world. So from there, we grew into managing all sorts of associations, state associations, national associations, now international associations. So it's really been very cool to have a global presence. So it's exciting.
That is awesome. But you've done a lot more than that too. Like you're also the mayor pro tem, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the city of Arvada, I'm the mayor pro tem. So I've served on Arvada City Council for 4 years. I've got about 3 months left until the end of my term. So I'm the mayor pro tem there. I also serve on the board of directors for Blues and Barbecue for Better Housing. It's an organization that my husband started 24 years ago that raises money for affordable housing and Habitat for Humanity Metro Denver. So I serve on that board of directors, and we run a festival every year that raises money for Habitat for Humanity.
That's quite impressive. I mean, you got a lot of things going on, a lot of balls in the air. I know you also will go out and do speaking engagements or facilitate or moderate sessions with associations. You also got your CSAE. You're always willing to help out the chambers. You're always willing to help out. I mean, I even think about I forgot the name of the group you started with us. It was the Mastermind.
Yeah.
The Mastermind. Thank you. Yes, the Mastermind group. And how you pulled us all together. So you have that knack of pulling people together. But how is it that you're able to juggle all those balls and still keep going? Because a lot of us wear multiple hats, but sometimes it gets a little bit frustrating or tiring.
Sure. So for me, the answer is yes, right? If somebody asked me to help, the answer is yes. I love to facilitate strategic plans. I love to do board orientations. And through Zoom and the pandemic, I've been able to speak on a global scale. So even at 8:30 at night, I'll be speaking to a group of association execs in the Philippines. And I love it, right? I absolutely love what I do. And that gives me the energy and the drive to keep doing it and keep doing more. I live and breathe by my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it's not happening.
Okay.
So I have an incredible routine that I have. My alarm goes off at 4:30 every morning. I go to the gym again. Those exercise and endorphins are something that you need in your life. And then I get probably more done in my day from 7 to 8 than I do in the whole rest of the day. Nobody has started working yet. Nobody started sending me emails yet. So I get all of those big chunk projects done. And then really the coolness factor is my husband, Ranger Miller, who is the most incredible man in the entire world, is an airline pilot. So when he flies, he'll usually leave for a 3 or 4 day trip. So when he flies, I work around the clock. And I schedule my meetings that have to be for city council or any of the evening meetings I need with associations or chambers of commerce. I schedule those in the evenings when he's gone. And then when he's here, I don't work those big long days. For me, work-life balance is huge. And a lot of people think that I'm too busy to have any kind of life at all. And that is just not true because I play just as hard as I work.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to some of us association executives, especially the newer ones, who find themselves stretched so thin and they're trying to achieve that work-life balance? Because that's very tough sometimes. You say, a lot of people say work-life balance, but they don't really mean it. They don't really live it. And we just had a brief conversation about when we have to go to these events and we're taking care of our leaders or we're networking with a lot of people and that work-life balance shifts. So what advice would you give to us regarding work-life balance?
All right, so this took me a long time to figure out. So hopefully it won't take you as long as it took me. Setting boundaries is the key to your owning your own life, right? You have got to set boundaries. And I think as executives, especially newer executives or an executive in a new position or a new role with a new organization, you want to be available all the time. And if your board president sends you an email on a Saturday morning, you want to be able to answer it. But you have got to set boundaries. One thing that's very important to me that I started doing recently, and for all of you that are watching this, that I've done this to, it's boundaries for me. It's nothing to be offended about. But if somebody wants to meet for an hour, I just don't do it. I just don't have an hour. And you can meet for 30 minutes and get things done. If you want, and the other thing is if I know that a lot of people want to be back to in-person meetings, but if you can do it virtually and it can be quick, it saves you that travel time. So I do try to get out of my office and meet with people. But if somebody really wants to meet for coffee about something that isn't urgent in my business or personal life, I will say to them, I don't have time in the next 2 weeks because my calendar is so booked to meet in person. But if you want to meet within those next 2 weeks, I have got 30 minutes at these times. And that's a nice way of saying, I want to meet with you urgently, or I want to give you the time that you're looking for sooner rather than later. And it gets me out of going to an hour-long coffee. Because if you have an hour-long coffee, it's 20 or 30 minutes there. It's an hour. It's 20 or 30 minutes back.
Yes.
And in person, it's all the niceties. Good morning. How are you? How was your week? Which is great. And you need that in your life, right? Then you're waiting for somebody to take your order and you're waiting for the check at the end. And there's all that time. It's 1,440 minutes in a day. You've got about 640 good ones to use. Make them count.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. I'm going to take a step back and we're going to talk about your transition from the association world. You're still working with a lot of associations. You have your own company, but you also stepped into, you mentioned this, into the legislative world. You ran for mayor, right? Or you're on the city council.
On city council, yeah. So mayor pro tem.
Mayor pro tem. Maybe someday, right? But tell us about your experience with that, and then why did you make that transition? And then last but not least, what would you say to other people? Why would it be important for people to make that leap into the legislative process?
Yeah, so I wanted to be, when I was a little girl, it was going to be the first woman president of the United States, right? And or at least I was going to be the mayor because I saw Dante's Peak when I was in high school, and there was a woman mayor of that small town, and I wanted to be the woman mayor. And then when I was served on Arvada City Council, I wanted to run for office back then because I felt like we had a business-friendly council, but I thought it would be even cooler if the chamber president was served on the council. The Glendale mayor was also the Glendale Chamber of Commerce, if you remember, Larry Hart. And so at the time, my board didn't want me to do it, and I respect that. But when after I was no longer the Chamber of Commerce president, the opportunity became available, and I saw the slate of folks that were on council, all the people that were running on all the different races, and I just wanted to make sure that we had and maintained a business-friendly council. So I ran, and then elected office is, for some people, is amazing. For somebody like me, it's a difficult experience, right? So I like to get things done. Government doesn't work that way. Right. We implemented a organized waste hauling system in Arvada. It took 2.5 years. For me, I'm like, why? We said we were going to do this. We should already have it installed, 6 months later.
Right.
And for me, that's hard to wrap my head around. But I understand the process and why it happens and why you have all of the community involvement. And I just am not wired that way, right? I want to hear from the community. Let's send out a survey, call everybody, get that input back, and make a decision. But over time, you need to make sure that that things take a lot of time. The other thing is people are really passionate right now about everything. And unfortunately, there's not as much civility as we should have in this world. So no matter what decision you make on council, most of the time, somebody is on the opposite side of that decision. If it's a development, or if it's a organized waste hauling, or if it's bike lanes, so somebody's got a problem with it. And it used to be a very respectful conversation. And now people have really gotten very passionate. And so I would say to people, I have very dear friends that are the most amazing elected officials that have run time and time again. They have been serving for 12 years, 16 years. And I encourage it for people that have that mindset. And so public office, I'm not going to go any further than this mayor pro tem position. I'm not going to run again. But for people that want to get involved, I would say jump right in with both feet. And you've got to have some thick skin.
Yeah.
And as far as if you don't want to run, one of the parts of your question was how do people get involved with their elected officials is take them for lunch or have a Zoom meeting like this. With the state legislature, outside of the legislative session is the perfect time for you to do that, because they have the time and they want to get to know their constituents. And then when they have an issue and it's in your field, in your industry, they're calling you because they know you now. And that's the call that you want.
So do you feel like your involvement with the association and also in your community, all these years, over 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. Really made you a target for some of the legislators to say, hey, you'll be a good person to run for city council in my area?
Yeah. I have been asked to run for mayor. I've been asked to run for the state legislature. There are some people that say dot for governor. I'm like, oh, no, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the compliment. That's really sweet.
Right.
But I'm good.
It is a compliment. It is a compliment.
I'm good. Yeah. So but I have loved my experience. I've loved it. I love having conversations, even people that are upset and they call me. I love to have a conversation and they start out really, I like to say passionate because it's a better word than anything negative, but they start out very passionate and very opinionated. And then you talk them through, what really goes on with the process. And I think that's most of it, right? People don't understand the actual process. And then you end the conversation on a very friendly note. And so I do love that. I love the people. I love everybody in Arvada. It's just a different time now.
Yeah. So what's next for DOT? I mean, right. You're doing a lot of things. You got a successful business. Mm-hmm. And so what's next for you?
So this is a very cool thing. So we are talking with some global organizations about doing some work around the world and starting associations in Africa and Latin America. I'm very excited about that work. 5 years from now, my husband is retiring. So 5 years from now, it will look very different. The solution, with me and my role in the solution, I have the greatest team, so I don't always have to be around in Colorado. But my hope is my husband and I will live in Europe for half the year and live here half the year, starting in 5 years. So a lot of travel. I don't think I could ever give up working with associations because I love them so much. But yeah, a lot more play.
Yeah, I went onto your webpage, I will admit, and I read a little bit about you being on city council. And it said that you and your husband won an Image Award for all the work you did in your community. So congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So what did you guys do? I mean, why did you get so involved in your community? I mean, because I think it's awesome when you do that. I think everybody should get involved.
So one of the things that we did, we are always, like I said, my husband and I have the same mentality. The answer is yes. If you need help, the answer is yes. So one of the reasons we won that award is for the Jefferson County Business Education Alliance. So I used to own a company and I hired all teenagers. I had about 30 teenagers that worked for me at a time. And we started the Jefferson County Business Education Alliance to help students become workforce ready. We felt like the academic schools in Jefferson County were fantastic. We wanted to add on to that and build upon that. And we had business leaders teaching students, what it's like to interview for a job, but then what happens on day one? What is work ethic? What is leadership? How do you work as a team? Things like that. So they got all of these different experiences and went out to different businesses and different sizes, different locations all over the state. They met with elected officials. They met with police and fire to really understand what makes up the fabric of their community, but then also how to give back to their community and how to be a good employee with solid work ethic in the community. So we did a lot of work over a number of years and spoke in a lot of classrooms. I think that was the reason for that.
Yeah. And so you do believe that it's very important for us to be involved in our communities.
Absolutely.
Also saw that you love children, you love working with children and all that good stuff. That's awesome. Coming out of the pandemic, I don't know if we're really out of it yet, but we've transitioned though to where the states opened up, the country's opened up again. But what were some of the lessons you learned from the pandemic? But then also not just last year, but this year, because this year's even been like a little bit different.
Sure. I think one of the lessons is flexibility and to check in on people. We get so isolated in our environment. Zoom calls, I get to see you. I hardly get to see you anymore. We don't see each other at CSAE events as much anymore. And I miss that relationship. I miss that camaraderie. And you can have a Zoom call and you get things done, but the ideas and the creativity happen when you're in person at events and things like that. So checking in one-on-one with people that you haven't talked with in a while, the flexibility of online events, virtual events, hybrid events, all of those things and what it looks like, the ability to adapt to new environments and new technologies, but also maintaining that connection with people through a computer. I mean, it's hard to do. It's complicated, but it's important. And being kind.
Yeah, I agree with you. You mentioned that people are being passionate. They're very passionate right now, but I think a lot of people are emotional too. Their answers, their responses are emotional.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of pent up. And one of the things that we heard I was in one of the breakout sessions at the CSAE conferences, and I've heard this for years, but it's so true. You've got to get outside. For 30 minutes a day, you've got to get outside. And one of the speakers said 5 minutes of joy gives you an hour of additional productivity, which I absolutely believe. I could sit at my computer from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. without getting up, but you have got to get up and, love on your dog a little bit or take a walk around the block, so you've got to get outside and you've got to do that. To self-care is super important as well.
Yeah. And I could talk to you forever and ever about all this stuff. I really appreciate your time today. Dot, you're one of a kind, you're special. I love the way you bring people together. So I just want to wrap up the podcast today by saying thank you for all your efforts and the energy that you give to CSAE. And hopefully everyone can take something away from the interview with you. I'm sure they will. And signing off, CSAE podcast, one of the best minds in the business. Thank you, Dot.
Thank you, Tyrone.